Well, good morning, Greenwich, and welcome to the Monday, December 13th edition of the Basement Academy. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day. Hope your weekend went well. I had a great time in worship yesterday and last night, our Christmas potluck with families and others in the church, and watching that puppet show again, and a rousing time of singing carols, concluding with the 12 Days of Christmas song. So if you were there, you know what I'm talking about. All right, our morning psalm as we begin this new day and new week together. Psalm 43. Love this language, send forth your light and your truth. And I think that's ultimately what Christmas is about, God sending forth light and truth in the person of Jesus Christ. Psalm 43. Vindicate me, O God, and plead my cause against an ungodly nation. Rescue me from deceitful and wicked men. You are God, my stronghold. Why have you rejected me? Why must I go about mourning, oppressed by the enemy? Send forth your light and your truth. Let them guide me. Let them bring me to your holy mountain, to the place where you dwell. Then will I go to the altar of God, to God, my joy and my delight. I will praise you with the harp, O God, my God. Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God. Great prayer as we encounter each of us in the course of our lives, a downcast soul, and feeling like we're being attacked. And why have God rejected us? Send forth your light and your truth, O Lord. And so that sign, that Lord himself will give you a sign, Emmanuel. And so, Lord, hear our prayer. Hear our prayer today. Okay, for these couple weeks leading up to Christmas, next 2 weeks, this week and next, would like to just reflect kind of pastorally, theologically, personally on the Incarnation. Okay, that's kind of the theological word for what happened at the birth of Jesus. God becoming human flesh. We'll kind of bring that out a little bit at the end here. I think you've heard this, if you've been coming to Greenwich for a while, you kind of hear this theme from me around Christmas and Easter, that they're both blessings and burdens. The blessing, obviously, is the celebration that we enjoy, the opportunity to proclaim the birth of Christ, the opportunity to proclaim the death and resurrection of Christ is such an honor and such a joy. But so that's the blessing. The burden comes from all the stuff that goes around that. And there's something in me over the years that has kind of pushed back against the making much of this on this day. And kind of the tradition and history of the church to go all out, pull all the stops out, and just go all out at Christmas and go all out at Easter. Am I against celebrations? No. But what I'm against is this, the kind of subtle message, or how do I say it? The misleading quality of those pull out the stop celebrations. In August, it is still true that Christ is risen. In a cold, April rainy morning, it's still true that Jesus is born, that Christ came among us and walks with us, Emmanuel. And so when we make these once a year celebrations, it tends to obscure the fact that the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ are present realities every day of the year. Okay, so that's a little bit of my pushback. Now, So, question, just to kind of get us into this thinking for this week. How do we not lose the story, okay, the story of Christ's birth and what that really means? How do we not lose the story in the midst of all of the other stories that are going on in our cultural celebration of Christmas? Okay? Now, what I mean by that, the main character of this story is God, who is faithful over time, who promised to Abraham long ago, 4,000-ish years ago, that he was going to bless all peoples through Abraham and Abraham's family. And then as the story unfolds, you got Moses, and then you've got David, and you've got prophets, etc. And over time, all these arrows start to point towards this one person who in the fullness of time then is born. Okay, the virgin will be with child, will conceive and give birth to a son, and he'll be called Emmanuel. We read that yesterday from Isaiah 7 and Matthew chapter 1. The fulfillment of God's long promises in the birth of Jesus. Jesus is the main character, okay? But in our cultural practice of Christmas, what's grown up over time have been other stories that are somewhat loosely based on, or at least draw their source in the story of Christmas, the birth of Christ and the angels singing and the shepherds, etc. And so there are other characters that vie for the award for the main character at Christmas, namely Santa. Now, Santa Claus is just a form of Saint Nicholas, who was a faithful Christian, a bishop, who was at the Council of Nicaea, the Nicene Creed, all of these wonderful realities that are confessing and leading towards the Orthodox faith of the Christian church. But St. Nicholas gets twisted because of his generosity and compassion on the poor. All of a sudden it morphs into this jolly red-suited fellow who flies around the world, okay? And so you ask any child in America who the main character of Christmas is, and they're going to say Santa. And they might say Rudolph. And we have, over the years, added to the pantheon of characters this time of year, Frosty the Snowman and the Grinch who tried to steal Christmas. And in recent decades, probably, I don't know, is this movie 15 years old? Buddy the Elf, Will Ferrell playing. But again, it's Santa's workshop, and you've got all this other stuff going on. Scrooge, so from literature, you've got Scrooge, and so there's all of that. And somehow we also have concocted a little drummer boy who was at the manger. Like, who are we kidding? That's no part of the story, right? We love the song, and we're going to hear it again this coming Sunday. The choir's going to sing it, but it's not part of the story, okay? And so this is what I mean. You've got the story of Christ's birth and the wonder and majesty and mystery of all that. And then over time, our culture has come to embrace and tell all these other stories. And then you've got the Hallmark movie channel, right? And so, may my mother's memory live forever. But we'd be watching Hallmark Christmas movies in July, and then they would start in October. And it was just really one story and set in, 3 mythical towns. So there's something about the story of Jesus' birth that resonates. The impossible, the miraculous, the underdog, the turnaround, the peace, the goodwill, the angels, the shepherds. And so that one story is the basis. And then all these other stories about gatherings and family and peace and good cheer and old Scroogey Ebenezer being kind after all. And, you've got all this stuff that draws from this one story, but all of them ignore the story of Jesus' birth. Santa's never really doing anything with Jesus, right? In the modern expression of it. And so the story of our culture is buy, spend, eat, drink. And then it's all over. So you get this build up from October, from kind of like before Halloween on in our culture and our stores. I guarantee you, friends, few days after Christmas is over, they're on to Valentine's Day. They're on New Year's Day and then Valentine's Day. And the culture, it's all about spending and accumulation and gifts and toys and all that stuff. It has nothing to do with Jesus. So that's my first thing, is how do you not lose the story as Christians? I don't expect the culture to understand the Jesus story. I do expect Christians, or hope Christians, will not lose the Jesus story. Second thought has to do with recognizing ways that the church itself has conspired to obscure this story, this message. We have conspired with the culture. Some of it is going back to the Roman Catholic Church, which fixed the date of Jesus' birth at December 25th. Scholars believe it probably is more likely in March. There's not consensus, but there's general agreement about that. But the church pulled it back and co-opted the winter solstice festival. Let's not have these pagans, have all the fun. And so the December 25th, as you've got the sunlight that's getting shorter and shorter and shorter as we get to the winter solstice. And so, if I've got it straight, this notion of the birth of the unconquered sun, the sun, the sun seems like it's diminishing and diminishing and diminishing as the daylight hours get shorter and shorter. But the sun is unconquered, and then the days start getting longer from then on, right? And so the church kind of pulling in, we're gonna determine who gets celebrated here. We're gonna worship the unconquered sun, S-O-N, okay? And so going all the way back to the fixing of December 25th, the church, the Catholic Church, which was kind of the only game in town back then, fixed it. So there's that. But the church is complicit in the craziness as well. We ramp up the calendar. It's modest at Greenwich, but some churches, go all out. But still, at Greenwich, we have pageants, we have special concerts, the choir sings. They'll be singing this Sunday. It's wonderful. So don't hear me wrong. I love all this stuff. It's wonderful. But we make more about one Sunday or one day than I think we ought to. And so we decorate the sanctuary. Why don't we have the sanctuary decorated all the time? Because it's truth that Jesus is with us always. Emmanuel is with us always, not just for, a couple weeks a year. And so in some way we kind of adopt the culture's decorations, wreaths and trees, and we Christianize with our Christmas tree. Again, I like it. But there's a subtle way that we're kind of cooperating with the culture in kind of we're trying to tell the story, but in telling the story, we obscure the story. Emmanuel is with us always, not just this one little season. And so with all of the buildup of Christmas and Easter, naturally comes a letdown, okay? And we ramp up, and then we exhaust ourselves, and Greenwich is a pretty good-sized church. We're a 500-member church, but I've served in a couple larger churches. As a youth director at Eastminster Presbyterian in Wichita, Kansas, we were maybe 1,800 members, something like that. And then First Presbyterian Church of Boulder, Colorado, prior to coming here. And we had a couple thousand members. And it's just, it's big stuff. In the bigger church, the bigger the church, the more gets made of this, the more Christmas services, the more Easter services, to accommodate all the people who come. And so it was like an all hands on deck event for the staff for several weeks on end. There's something that's really joyful and great about that, but there is something, then there's this letdown and kind of like, we exhaust ourselves in the production of the event. And so I want to think with you for a couple days. Christmas as the event, and Christmas as the holy mystery that it is. And so the rubric, or the way to think about this, way to get at this, is through the language of incarnation. Okay? Now, we draw this notion. Incarnation is just a word that means enfleshment. Okay? The enfleshment of God. God, who is spirit, outside this world, creator of this world, enters this world in the person of Jesus the Messiah, Jesus the Christ. And so Orthodox, true Christianity believes that Jesus is God, come in human flesh. And so the incarnation refers to the enfleshment of God, or the Word made fleshment. And that's obviously a made-up word, okay, made-up phrase. But it comes from John chapter 1, what we call the prologue. It's a little lengthy. It's 18 verses. I'm going to go ahead and read that and just for a moment reflect. And then as we get into this week and next, I want to kind of extend that reflection on the incarnation of God in Jesus. And so John starts with a very intentional echo of Genesis chapter 1, about in the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. And now you're going to have John saying some parallel truths, but they speak to the reality of creation. This one we celebrate was here before the creation. Jesus was an agent in creation. So, John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. There came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all men might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testifies concerning him. He cries out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me." From the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but God, the one and only, who is at the Father's side, has made him known. And so we call that the prologue. John introduces us to someone who was in the beginning, who was known as the Word, who was with God, one who was God, is God, one who was not received by his own. He came to his own, but his own did not embrace him. But to all who did embrace him, to receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God. John has yet to name this person who was in the world, who made the world. The world, everything that was made through him. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. And so John, he kind of sets the hook and sets it deep. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. So this one is known as the Word, and he's now made flesh, and he makes his dwelling among, and he reveals the glory of God, and he's full of grace and truth. But we don't yet know who this person is. And so John, with rhetorical device, we believe under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, if you've never heard anything about the story and you start here, you're going, who is he talking about? Who is this person that was in the beginning with God, was with God, was part of the creation of the world, has light and life in himself, and yet now made flesh? The law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Verse 17. He sets it up and sets it up and sets it up and sets it up, and then boom, Jesus. He names the one who was in the beginning with God, who is with God, who was God. And so John very skillfully, again, we believe in the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, sets the hook and introduces us with kind of a flair, theatrical, rhetorical flair. God, the one and only, this only begotten. We hear that phrase later in chapter 3, of course. And so I want to reflect with you on the mystery of this Word made flesh, Jesus. And going to do some interesting stuff tomorrow in the reflection that may leave you scratching your head, but I think will hopefully lean us towards wonder and awe and the mystery at the birth of Jesus. So let's stop here. Let me invite you to watch to the end of each of these this week, just to hear it out. There will be some other passages that we'll consider that you would not typically think of as Christmas-y verses. Christmas-y verses. They don't become part of the normal reading cycle that we here at Greenwich. But want to tease out some theological meaning and some practical implications. What does it mean? What difference does it make in my life that Jesus was born? That's where we're going. Okay, let's pray. Father, thank you for the mystery of the Incarnation. Thank you for inspiring through your Spirit John to write these immortal words. They truly live forever. Help us to be drawn into the holy mystery of the Incarnation. Guard us as we wrestle in the midst of our culture's crazy celebration of an event that the culture has no interest in. The world has no interest in Jesus as the Christ. The darkness has not understood this light. And so, Lord, help us to walk as people of the light and to bear witness to this light, even in the darkness of our world. And so accompany us on this journey, Emmanuel, as we reflect together, praying in your holy name, even as you taught us to pray together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. May God send forth his light and truth and grace through Jesus Christ upon you and your loved ones this day and forevermore. Amen.